Hello, everybody. This is Brian from Necronomicast. Thank you for tuning in for this exciting 13th season of the show. Couldn't do it without you. Now, if you're ever wondering if there was a kind of a fun and inexpensive way that you could support the production of the show, I've got news for you. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/Necronomicast. Every time I have an author on the show, I've purchased their book. Whenever a documentary filmmaker or a creative person is on the show to talk about their project, you know I've supported their project. So if you go to buymeacoffee.com/Necronomicast, that will enable me to continue to do the work that I do here on the show. So I thank you so very much from the bottom of my heart for all of the support and encouragement you've given me over the years. And you know what? If you buy me a cup of coffee at the website, I would be more than happy to deliver a personalized message to you on the show. 2 or more cups of coffee, you're going to get something in the mail. buymeacoffee.com/Necronomicast. And now, on with the show. From the historic, haunted heartland of Omaha, Nebraska, my name is Brian Corey, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this episode of Necronomicast. Episode 255. This episode's got it all. Murder, piles of cash stashed in the most unlikely of places, a blood-soaked crime scene, the remote dump site for bodies, luxury cars, flashy jewelry, and hundreds upon hundreds of pounds of illegal dope. The story is 3 bodies burning, the anatomy of an investigation into murder, money, and Mexican marijuana. This book is written by retired narcotics and homicide Omaha police officer Brian Bogdanoff. I was super excited to welcome Brian into the Necronomicast studios for this conversation, and we also make a phone call to somebody very important to the investigation that was there the night of the murders. All right, everybody, here we are at Necronomicast headquarters. I rarely have a guest in the studio, but I thought it was safe to have in retired Omaha police officer, Detective Brian Bogdanoff here in the studio. Brian, officer, sir, welcome.
Thank you.
I encountered you in your book when I went to one of your lectures at a local Omaha bookstore where you were giving a hugely fascinating talk about this case and your career. So, Omaha Detective, long distinguished career. How did you start getting involved in law enforcement here in Omaha?
The story with my involvement is I grew up in Omaha, I was actually the first or the second year of busing. So the desegregation philosophy. Mm-hmm. And so I went from West Omaha to a place called Horace Mann, which is at about 20th and Pinckney. So inner city for 7th and 8th grade. No, for 9th grade. 7th and 8th grade were out west. From there, I went, you had your choice to go to whatever high school you wanted to. I went to Central High. Central was known for its English. I didn't think that would pay off in my life, but it did. So I graduate, I go to UNO. I don't declare a major for a few years. I still didn't have any destiny in my life. I take a class called Deviant Behaviors. It was a Professor Hoffman, and it was in criminal justice, and it was about murder and gore and bad stuff. And I loved it.
Did you have any law enforcement in your family?
None.
Okay.
None.
Okay.
So, yeah, everyone else is pretty professional. I was definitely the low end of the scale. So that's okay. So I take more classes at UNO in criminal justice. Ultimately, I do an internship at the Omaha Police Department. It was in youth services. So that would be like runaway kids, child crimes. They don't even have youth services anymore. It's broken down into different things. Mm-hmm. But that would have been on the 4th floor, CIB, Criminal Investigation Bureau. And remember when a guy, John Jubert, abducted a couple boys?
Oh, yeah.
From SAC Air Force Base.
Yeah, I was 9 and I did a whole show. I interviewed Mark Pettit in his book.
Mark Pettit's a friend of mine, actually. He went to UNO and I did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know Mark Pettit very well.
Mark was on my show. We talked all about his book, Need to Kill.
Yep.
So listeners, go back and listen to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Mark Pettit and I were at UNO together.
See, I was born in 74. So the Joubert stuff happened in 82, 83. So I was I was just a little bit younger than those guys that were abducted back then.
Okay. So that's now in people's mindset. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's got people all at high alert for that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So I'm an intern, 85-ish, and a young boy named Richard Chaddock gets abducted at 42nd and Valley. His body's found about a week later in northwest Omaha, which would probably be neighborhoods now, but at the time it was pretty rural.
Mm-hmm.
He'd been murdered. So that put the Joubert thing into high alert. People were very upset. So they created a task force for this investigation. And they had a call center. So here I am, a 19-year-old kid working at the police station, and I'm a call taker on this hotline, sitting like to FBI agents. So it was hook, line, and sinker from that point on. I graduated college, took the first police test, and became a police officer.
Wow. Yeah, that Chaddock case, they never figured out who did that, did they?
It's still unsolved.
That's incredible. Yeah. How sad was that?
Very sad.
Jeez.
Yep.
So, all right. So
that's how I become a police officer.
You're a police officer now. And, I'm back in the story. So you're a police officer. You are in, let's see, you were in narcotics first.
Well, you can't start in a specialty area. So first it's uniform patrol. Now this time period is your mid to late 80s. So probably late 80s. That's when the gangs are starting to come to Omaha from the West Coast. And the first place they start to congregate is in the housing projects. And most of those, I think, have been torn down. But the two biggest ones in Omaha were Logan Fontenelle, which was 20th to 24th, Clark to Paul. And it was actually like Hamilton to Paul. So it's like 1,400 to in blocks to like 1,900. It's basically a 4x4 square.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big area. And it's nicknamed, so it's Logan Fontenelle, and it was called Little Vietnam because of all the gunshots. So it was known as Little Vietnam. And then you had the Vietnam Bloods that worked out of there. And then you had the Victor Street Bloods that kind of correlated with them. And then ultimately their rival is the Hilltop Crips, which is the Hilltop Projects. So you had Hilltop and Pleasant View. One was at 30th and Lake, and the other one was just a little bit south. The Pleasant View was a high rise, and then Hilltop was like your row housing.
Yeah.
So anyway, the mayor at the time, I think, was Bernie Simon, but I don't know that for sure. Whoever the mayor was, this is becoming a political issue. So the brainstorming was, we'll have foot patrols walk in the projects. Police departments based on seniority. The last guy gets the shittiest job. So
you were like a beat cop?
I walked a foot patrol, right basically out of the chute, go through field training. Then you have FTO, that's what they call it, field training. So you ride with another officer on each shift for 2 or 3 weeks. So you're exposed to they call it A shift, B shift, and C shift. So A is midnight to 8 in the morning. B is 8 to 4, and then C is 4 to midnight.
Do they have this kind of beat?
No.
Anymore? They don't do that?
No. I mean, I think they have a beat like in the old market, but it's more of a public. It's not like high crime.
What was the idea of it back then? Was it to have like cops on the street?
Oh yeah, we walked.
Well, I mean, so they're like an everyday friendly kind of.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, that's when your people skills definitely kick in. I mean, I became friends with bad guys,
mm-hmm.
And there was tons of good people. It's not all thugs and bad people.
Oh, right.
Yeah, there's tons of good people. And I mean, the normal day in our hours were 6 to 2. So we kind of overlapped. So that would be your prime crime hours. So we were the beat patrol, and then they had a beat backup. So it patrolled the perimeter. So every time we needed help, they would come in, and that was their sole job. Yeah. And that just a crazy philosophy.
Yeah. Now, when I was a kid, up until I was 4, I lived just north of Northwest Radial Highway, about 48th maybe.
Okay.
And then my parents moved to about 90th Street so I could go to West Side.
Okay.
So they moved when I was 5. but I still have tons of friends that live over just kind of east of the Benson area.
Yeah.
40,
Well, that's where this murder happened.
Right. So,
Yeah.
the birthplace of this show, the Necronomicast, was born in a house about 47th and Bedford Avenue. So,
Well, these were 40th Ave Crips,
right.
the ultimate suspects, and that's 40th Ave in Bedford to Pinckney.
And it was crazy reading in the book. I go over to their house, and it's a cute neighborhood, totally. But we're talking late 80s, early 90s when this was going. Well, 2005 is when the
murder was. But so in the late 80s and 90s, that's high crime right there. Like, so you had the circle, you had at 40th in Bedford, you had the gas station, and then you had Larry's food station.
Mm-hmm.
So then you went one block up, it would have been 40th Ave, and then it went from Bedford to Pinckney, and then cars would just circle around that square block, and you had drug dealers that were in between the houses. It was like a drive-up drug. It was unbelievable.
That's crazy.
I mean, you had lines, you could watch lines of cars, and then cops you could do what you could do, but it was overwhelming. It was the same way in Logan Fontenelle. There was a area called the Horseshoe. So it was kind of an inlet. You went into some housing units, and then you came back around and came back out. Well, it was like the busiest inlet in the world because, we would set up surveillance on rooftops, watch these guys, and you could see where they were hiding it, or you could see a deal go down. Then you could call a uniform car to pull the car over, and hopefully you'd find the dope,
Uh-huh.
So that's the environment that this was. And it wasn't like once in a while. This was all the time.
So you knew everybody pretty much in that area.
Well, there was a lot of people, but I knew a lot. Yeah. You knew people. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the reason that I've got him here, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about his book, and you wrote this book based on just an incredible case in Omaha. And I can't believe how much of this was shockingly new to me. Now, I've lived in Omaha all my life, except for going to college in Lincoln and going on vacations. So I'm an Omaha guy, and I know every place that you're talking about in this book, one way or another. But you wrote this book, 3 Bodies Burning, an anatomy of an investigation into murder, money, and Mexican marijuana. It was the #1 Amazon bestseller and true crime book of the year winner. It's an incredible book, especially, for a first-time writer. For a first-time author.
I wrote a lot of search warrants and wiretaps.
Yeah, you talk about that a lot in this book. Like, you talk about the dozens and dozens and dozens of pages for all these search warrants and everything else, that you had to go as part of this investigation. So you're a cop for a number of years. You finally make your way into narcotics. And then let's take everybody up to now to 2005, a day in May, a Tuesday. Somebody calls in on the north side of town, Midtown, north side, 60th and State, like you said. And I know that, I know this area. I know Omaha. Somebody calls in a pretty big brush fire.
A brush fire. There's smoke. Yeah. They think it's a brush fire.
Sure. It's a Tuesday morning. There's a big fire out, and it's north past these houses, past where the residential area is.
Raven Oaks. You're getting close to McKinley. So it's getting rural-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's a uniformed police officer goes out there, grabs a fire extinguisher out the trunk of the patrol car. And then all of a sudden, what's he see?
So the person that called it in as a brush fire. The uniformed patrol officer went solely to block traffic for the fire truck, but he got there first. So he goes back to look at the fire, and he sees 3 bodies burning. So now he's in panic mode. You don't want to destroy evidence, but you want to put out the fire. You want to protect the crime scene. There's going to be evidence all around. And this officer was pretty alert. He used a fire extinguisher from his car with minimal destruction of evidence, got it out, and secured the scene. So once the radio call of 3 bodies burning, which is kind of how the title started, just from that statement.
Yeah.
People are coming from all directions trying to see, cops, everyone.
Yeah.
Media hears that, they're trying to get in. So ultimately, it's secured. And this ended up being a huge crime scene. You had the inner crime scene, which is where the bodies were. And then as the area was looked at, there was blood trails that went about a half mile in each direction, which would be unusual. You would think it'd be one way or the other. So then we had to cordon off for about a half mile in each direction from the bodies to document these blood trails.
So this call comes in, and I just want to reiterate, for people that are totally unfamiliar with this story, which is most of my listeners, 3 bodies burning. So there's no car. It's not like there was a car accident and they were thrown from the car and they're burning. There's 3 guys, and ladies and gentlemen, he's brought in evidence photos. You brought in like real evidence photos and showed me and my wife these pictures, and I saw them when I saw your lecture at the bookstore. They are evidence photos. They're not doctored. They're not censored. They are from the Omaha Police Department. So these aren't bodies that are thrown from a car wreck, drunk driver, anything like that. I'm going to kind of describe them a little bit, but I want you to talk about it. They are laid out. They're tucked away sort of off the road. They've obviously been dragged and like dumped there. They're kind of like half naked, set on fire with an accelerant. So it's a huge fire. Talk about the condition of the bodies.
So, the initial crime scene, you're analyzing it. Their clothes their shirts are kind of pulled up. Their pants are around their knees or ankles. There's definitely burning of clothing. And you're starting to ask yourself questions. You don't come to any decisions, but the questions start firing. No pun intended.
Right.
Was there sex involved? Being unclothed? Was it a sign of disrespect by another gang trying to embarrass them? What is the answer to that? And those are things that you got to try to figure out.
So, and no ID.
No, the bodies have been cleaned. And, first, nothing's touched. It's documented a million different ways. Photography, measurements, video, documentation verbally by people as they're looking. So it was, I think, about a 16-hour crime scene. So it was a long time processing this crime scene.
And you guys you're called to the scene. You are there. You're checking it out. And then like talk about like what happens with an investigation like this? Like you talk about, you take a stack of your business cards, you and your partners, your associates, and you canvass the area to find anybody who has seen anything, heard anything, seen anything unusual, anything strange.
So it's kind of divided into our day shift crew. Off the top of my head, maybe had 6 or 7 detectives, like 3 sergeants, a lieutenant. So we get the call in the morning, and this was an early morning call. So it was kind of convenient because I was already coming to work as opposed to the middle of the night. So this wasn't super bad. Mm-hmm. And for me, I had just finished a 2-week trial on a double murder in South Omaha that happened in like 2003. So about a week before this, I had just been overwhelmed with stuff from this trial. So I was like, well, this isn't going to be given to me. I was like, oh. Right. So my first assignment on this was canvassing. So all I did was, not all, but I walked around for probably 8 to 10 hours or drove my car to different locations, knocking on doors, leaving cards on the doors, just asking people if they saw anything unusual that happened that morning. So that was my first involvement. After the scene's documented, we've done the canvas. We all meet back at the police station, and everyone's kind of updated on a briefing of what we've got so far. It would happen in the northeast corner of the 4th floor. That was the homicide area. And it was called the bomb room. Why it was called the bomb room, I don't know, but that's what it was called.
Right.
So everyone goes through it. Now, what has been learned at this point, once it's documented, the bodies are kind of moved. Ultimately, they're going to be removed. But then the pockets that hadn't burned are starting to be looked at. And whoever cleaned the bodies missed 2 items. They missed a hotel receipt that did have a name on it. Mm-hmm. So now we have a lead. That's right away within the, that first night, we are onto a lead. And then the second piece of paper was about, 4 inches by 6 inches. And it had 4 or 5 columns of numbers, 22s, 23s, but there was 158 of them in total. So immediately I'm asked by, I don't know if we're using real names. In the book, I used fake names.
It's your investigation.
So
it's your book.
The reason I used fake names in the book is I got legal advice. So I chose to use fake names.
Let me just tell you this real quick.
It's going to be hard for me to go back and forth between real names and fake names.
That's fine. Whatever you feel comfortable with. But I did go through and in anticipation of this talk, after I read the book and everything, I did, because you talk about, well, we went to so-and-so's storage place, so it's a company that owns, storage lockers, and there isn't one by that name in Omaha. But then I went and I found there's you can find online where you got your search warrant. So I'm like, oh, it's that company. Oh, well, and then I found out, here's the name of the real perpetrators and who's in jail now. And then here's the names of the witnesses. So I understand what you're saying, but you kept it more, it's not a fiction book, but you just changed the names to protect.
Everything is the exact events as they unfolded, except the names have been changed. I was advised that if you do get sued, you'll win using the real names, but you'd have to have a defense fund. If you change the names, you're good to go.
Right.
So I chose to change the names.
Yeah, and it doesn't detract from the story at all.
No, not at all.
No.
And everything's correlated in my mind. So in real life, the bad guys, ultimately, their street names are Clean and Cousin.
Mm-hmm.
In the book, they're Shine and Nephew.
Right.
So there's a correlation to everything. Family members' names were used. Mm-hmm. So Milt's Mini Storage, I think I used Bernie's Mini Storage.
I think it was Walt's that was the carpet shop.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Bernie was my dad's name.
Oh, okay.
So there's correlations everywhere. The U.S. attorney in it, her real name was Maria Moran. Fantastic attorney.
Is she the one that looks like Diane Lane that you described in the book? All right.
No. That was Leanne Reynoldsdorf, who's now a U.S. attorney. In the book, she's Georgianne Goldstein.
Yeah.
So that's Leanne Reynoldsdorf. She's now a district court judge.
Oh, okay.
Maria Moran is Lily Lomax. So Lily was my grandma's name. So
funny.
Anyway, we're getting way off track.
No. Because I want people to know this is also about the case, but this is also about
the writing process.
And how the book came to be as well.
Well,
the whole thing's super interesting.
Well, and there was never a plan for a book. Mm-hmm. The only reason there's a book is I would do school talks on search and seizure and probable cause, probably from the mid 90s. A call came in from a high school teacher who had a law class. His name was Jeff Sahlberg from Millard North. And so it came into the homicide unit, and somehow I was asked if I would do the talk, and I said, absolutely. So this went over really well. And so I started doing it twice a year for him, and then that branched out to him telling other schools. This got to be so intense that, I was undercover narcotics, and I actually we would use like recording equipment. You put a thing up to your ear, and you had like a tape recorder and the wire. It was not fancy like it is now.
Right.
So I was actually doing a talk, and I've been dealing with a guy, to buy dope from him. So, and I knew he was going to call me. So I have all my equipment set up in the classroom, and I tell everyone, if he calls, everyone's got to be really quiet. So these kids actually got to see me work a dope deal.
Did you talk shit on the call too in front of the kids?
No, you don't have to. These guys that talk shit, you need to be more of a business guy.
Right.
Yeah. The guys that are all thuggish really aren't that good.
Right.
In my opinion.
You showed me, me and my wife, a picture of you and your police officer friends, like after you bought a kilo of cocaine. Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
I did that a few times.
Okay. So we were talking about earlier, we were talking about the condition of the body. So these guys were totally burned. You showed me some photos. Some of them were just burned beyond kind of recognition.
At certain portions of their body, and then other parts where the accelerant didn't hit, it looked not as bad.
So but the cause of death was gunshot wounds.
So they go to autopsy the next day. And at autopsy, it's determined that one of them had a gunshot wound right to the top of the head, no defensive movements. So he was believed to be the first one. It was absolutely an execution. In the way that, you find this, you got to clean up the body, you got to shave the head, looking for that entrance wound, and then ultimately looking for a projectile that would be inside or portions of a projectile. You find stippling on that or can determine how close the weapon was.
So stippling,
Stippling would be the gunpowder that comes out,
Mhm.
travels a short distance. And then even closer than that, if there's a thing called an abrasion collar, which is just a little dark ring that would go around the entrance wound, that's that little bit of flame that comes out. And then you know the gun was right on them.
Gotcha.
And we have that.
Yeah.
That is in these photos.
So you got these 3 guys, you don't know who they are. You got a receipt from a hotel. So what do you do with that?
So we, that night, someone's at the hotel trying to make contact to see what the people at the hotel remember about these guys. One of the clerks described how there was 2 of them at the hotel, larger statured one, which ultimately his real name was Benigno Dominguez.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what I called him in the book. I think Richie.
Right.
So I'd have to I have a little diagram. Let me get my diagram.
Hey, no, I put a bookmark right here. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's my diagram chart.
Yeah, it's fantastic because I wish more true crime authors would do this because you've got it all diagrammed here. Here's the victims. Here's the Arizona crew, the Omaha connection, all the people.
Well, this is the way you do it in a real investigation. You have it's an association chart.
Yeah.
Because if you try to keep it straight in your head, you'll never do it.
Yeah. So it's not, I'm not putting down journalists or authors that research and do quality work doing it that way. But as a police officer, I'm like, how handy is this?
It keeps the reader completely connected to who the players are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's real school.
Well, I like that.
Yeah.
I was like, that's really handy.
Oh, yeah.
And you update
the jury likes it too.
I'm sure.
The jury likes it too. So we're at the hotel. One of the clerks said the biggest guy would sit on the couch. I think they were there for 2 days. And she said, it just looked like he was worried. She said, I couldn't articulate why I thought that, but that's what I thought. So that's something of interest.
Mm-hmm.
This case is making national news. It's out. And that evening we get a call from a party who says, I think the guys that killed in Omaha, I may know who it is. Ultimately, it's the twin brother of one of the victims. His name was Frank Wilkinson. I'm using real names. I don't know if I should or not, but that's just the way it is in my mind.
Sure.
So it's Frank Wilkinson and it's his twin brother. And he ultimately thinks it's them. So I'm actually talking to this guy on the phone and I'm trying to get information out of him and he's very reluctant. Ultimately, he says that there might have been some drug activity involved, but he's not getting in depth. And he says, the other guy is my half brother and his name's Benigno Dominguez. And he said that they were in town to collect money on dope.
So a lot of money.
A lot of money. Yeah. And so ultimately I don't get a lot of detail from him, but can we hit hold for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Someone's calling. It's the one we want.
All right, we're back. We had to take a little break because, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a call-in a little bit later in the show of actual one of the
parties of interest.
Parties of interest. So stay tuned for that. So let me ask you one thing. Just this is a personal question. When you're saying that they were staying at a hotel in Southwest Omaha, do you remember which one it was? Because I worked at a hotel in Southwest Omaha.
I'd have to look at reports.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, I think it was 108th and L. There's several of them right there. I can't remember.
Okay, I worked at the one 120th and L, which they've since torn down.
No, this was 108th.
I know which one you're talking about, though. Okay, that's super interesting. Okay, because I was like, I bet you $1 it's the one I worked at.
It's 108th and L.
Okay, all right. So we got these dudes that have been shot. We've kind of figured out who they are and that they're part of the cartel.
So we figured out who 2 of them are.
Oh, right.
We don't know who the third one is.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked the brother, well, who's the third one? And he says, I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out too. So we've established a relationship with him. He's definitely not completely forthcoming. But he agrees to talk with us if we come out there. So I don't know how, within a short period of time, I'm in Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, to talk to this brother. And ultimately, through a series of trips out there, we talked to the brother. We talked to ultimately a crew of about 8 guys that were associated with Benigno, the main Juarez connection.
Mm-hmm.
And what we learned was that he would supply this group of guys, and then they would redistribute marijuana in Phoenix. One of the parties was, and these were hard guys to track down. It didn't just happen overnight. I mean, it took trips and trips, multiple trips. And some of them were in different prisons or they were on the run. Then they get arrested. We'd have to shoot down there, trying to develop reasons to go down there that made sense, not just wasting city money.
Because you guys went down there quite often. Not quite often.
We did a lot of trips on this, yeah.
Yeah, because you have to talk to these guys in person.
Yes.
Yeah.
So ultimately, one of them, and as I'm talking to these different people, they're incriminating themselves. They're making incriminating statements about dealing drugs. So that's positive. We're not arresting them yet, but that's definitely going in the notebook.
Right. And we're not talking about guys selling nickel bags and stuff.
No, this is pounds and pounds.
Yeah. Right.
Well, with the main guy, it's tons, but it breaks down as it goes down the chain.
Sure.
But ultimately, through all this, it's described that the guy who introduced, and the question that we're asking these guys is, who's the Omaha connection? Do you guys know who the Omaha guys are? And we're asking that to each one of them, and we get responses that they've been here for about a year and a half, coming to Phoenix, picking up dope, and going back to Omaha. Ultimately, we learned that the guy who brought the black guys from Omaha into the ring was his name was KB, Kendrell Boyston.
Mm-hmm.
He ultimately was arrested in Arizona for shooting someone 6 times and had like an attempted first-degree murder charge. This guy, when I met him in jail, he was like 6'5", like 300 pounds, and not an ounce of fat on him. He was so intimidating. And then I know going into it, he shot someone 6 times. So this was in the jail, the Maricopa County Jail, where they wear the pink. I mean, this is right. This is the real deal. That's where this is happening.
That Sheriff Joe guy.
Yeah,
right.
That's actually.
Was he wearing pink when he walked in?
I don't remember, but I assume he was. I was so scared of him.
So then, okay, let's stop right there because that's super interesting. Like here you are, you're on the right side of the law. You're an armed.
Well, not in jail. You're not armed.
True. Okay. So, but you're a man of the law, keeper of the peace, and you're going, and so but it's your job to talk to this guy and to ask him the hard questions and not take any bullshit from him. And this guy, like you said, 6 foot,
he was huge,
6'5", 300 pounds, not an ounce of fat on him. Can snap you like a twig. Just that's crazy that that you are,
I'm not big.
No, I understand, and I'd be totally intimidated for sure, of course.
But the way I was playing it with these guys is it was their friend that got killed. So you need to help me if you want this avenged.
Like I'm on your side.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure this out.
I'm trying to figure this out for you. So he listens to us, not really given anything. And then ultimately after, half hour, 45 minutes of talking our little game, he says, I like you guys. I'll tell you exactly how it happened. So he then I know. So then he describes how he was smoking a joint like a year and a half earlier in a come and go or some convenience store parking lot, just not paying attention to anything. And a couple large statured black males approach him. They exchange pleasantries, smoke a little dope together. They don't know each other. And ultimately, the conversation is the Omaha guys say, we're looking for a hookup. He goes, well, I think I can help you. And so they feel each other out a little bit, but it went very quickly to, I think the first load was 200 pounds of marijuana. That went smooth. Payment went smooth. And then it went to 500 pounds twice a month for, till the murder happened.
Yeah. And then they got this, how'd they hook up with the guy, the white guy, Rick, that was driving.
Rick.
And then
we haven't got to Rick yet.
We haven't got to Rick yet.
Rick comes in a long way down the road.
Okay. Well,
we know, that happens, but we don't know about him yet.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's all happening, but we don't, in the investigative process, he hasn't even shown up yet.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So you've got these connections that you're starting to make with Phoenix Omaha, drugs, money, but you don't know who these two guys are. In the book, it's Shine and nephew, but in real life, it's
Clean and cousin.
Clean and cousin. So, but you don't know who these guys are at all.
And we have databases and search processes. There's a thing called FO cards, which is field contact cards.
Right.
There's gang records. There's, you can go through doc search looking just for names. There's all kinds of search processes, and nothing is coming up on those two nicknames. So then you broaden your search a little bit. You're looking for, you're asking informants. You're trying to be vague about it, but you're broadening your scope. But with that said, you don't want it going too broad because you can't trust everyone either. Right. So it's a balancing act of how far you push it. But it's really interesting how hard you go. But if we don't figure out those nicknames, the case is going to be dead. It's going to go cold.
So, but okay, let's talk about like how long you're putting tons of your own personal time and man hours into this. I mean, this is an exhaustive process. And you write as a police officer, like what a toll this takes on your family, like how you're sleeping 4 hours a night a lot of times during these investigations because you're listening later. I know this is down the line, but you're listening to pre-recorded jail calls and you've got hours of those to listen to. So so I mean, like this is really taking a toll on you physically and mentally. Well,
and you can't farm that stuff out.
Right. It's got to be done.
It's got to be done by one person because you'll learn the slang. You'll learn what interacts with a previous call. Mm-hmm. If you have to say
code words.
Yeah. One of them in this one was petitions.
Yeah.
One of the code words was petitions.
And what was that? Was that the, I forget, was it the money that was exchanging hands or was it the marijuana?
I'm trying to remember how it was. They had a 300-pound load that came. It was the marijuana.
Right.
Have the petitions been, have the petitions been picked up yet?
I love this book. This book's so good.
But and one other thing that's going back to the Arizona guys. So I told you we had trouble hooking up with the brother who we talked to on the phone. So when we went down there, he's avoiding us now. And that's of concern. So I get him on the phone and he ultimately agrees to meet me on Luke Air Force Base because he felt safe there. So he had some connection to get on. And then through law enforcement, I got on and we met at Luke Air Force Base. So once we're face to face and he is nervous. And what he says, he goes, the reason I was avoiding you is I didn't know exactly if you were for real or not because I thought you were with the cartel. And they're pissed off because they've lost $3 million of cash and the dope. So I didn't know if they were going to hold me responsible for my brother screwing up.
Sure. And 3 of their associates got killed.
Yes. So he goes, that's why I was avoiding you. So that shows, and he referred to them as people from the other side. That was his terms. He referred to the cartel as people from the other side.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel in danger yourself investigating all this from the cartel?
No, not from the cartel.
Yeah.
I was helping them real. In essence, they were trying to figure out who the large stature black guys were from Omaha too.
Sure.
They couldn't figure it out.
Oh my God.
No, this case wouldn't have gone very far had they figured it out.
That's true.
It would have been over a lot sooner.
And again, this is so crazy. Like all this expenditure of time, money, resources, all the stuff that you're investigating just comes from this one call that comes in that there's this brush fire in North Omaha.
It's all starting from a brush fire.
Amazing.
So the investigative process is underway, but it's getting stopped because we can't figure out who Clean and who Cousin is. Mm-hmm. So you hear the term a break in a case. You hear it all the time. We got the break. Breaks are not because of any good police work. It's totally luck.
Is that right?
So, yeah, it really is. I mean, sometimes you can make luck happen, but this was totally luck. So a guy named, I'm using real names. I wish I could reference better, but Montel, his first name was Montel.
I wonder who you're talking about.
I think it's Montel Williams. I don't know if he's on the chart because he ultimately he should be on the chart.
Which guy is he?
Anyway, this guy named Montel.
Montel Jones?
Montel Jones.
Yes.
So I used his first name and kept it straight.
There you go.
Montel Jones gets shot in the leg. Okay. Uniform patrol goes to the hospital because that's where he ends up to take a uniform police report, just a standard uniform patrol police report, assault.
Mm-hmm.
So uniform patrol guys are there, very routine, what happened. And he says, I got shot by these two guys named Clean and Cousin, and their real names are. And that's when we get the real names. So ultimately at that time in the police department, felony assaults also went to the homicide unit. So
Okay.
Now they're separate. But so a C shift officer who's doing some felony assault stuff, or he got assigned this, he was from New York. He had a New York accent. Bags.
Yeah.
He says, you're not going to believe this. And I'm sure he's bullshitting me.
Right.
I'm like, there's no way. And he shows me the report, and sure shitting, this is this police report that names our guys. So now the investigation goes into high gear. I mean, this is it. So, and I have the narcotics background. So this is perfect for me. So first we go to Montel in the hospital, and we're just all over him about, you didn't, and his excuse in the original crime report was just some random thing. I just got shot. I don't know really what it was about. Well, that's bullshit.
Right.
So, we're getting on him, and ultimately then he comes with it and says, well, the two biggest dope dealers in Omaha are Clean and Cousin. Well, the Omaha Police Department didn't know that.
Right.
That shows how far behind the ball.
Did you guys know? I mean, you had them in the system under other names, but just not their nicknames? Or
We didn't have them either. Well, we had their real names, but we didn't know their real names at the beginning.
And these guys are pretty young too, right?
Yeah. I think one was early 20s, the other one was mid 20s. Oh, yeah. These are not old guys.
Right.
No, not at all. But now we have their real names, and then you can start researching them. And they had past drug contact, but nothing like you would think they're multi-million-dollar dope dealers.
Yeah.
So he says, yeah, these guys have been coming up quick the last year, and they are major. So he goes, me and one of my homeboys, we figure out where one of their stash houses is. So, everyone's an entrepreneur. So he goes, we're going to do a home invasion, and we're going to take them and get some dope or money, whatever it is. So they go to the house, they got their guns out, knock on the door, and nobody's home. So their fallback plan is, instead of a home invasion, they just drop down one scale and do a burglary.
Right.
So it's just higher on the felony list of things.
Oh, good for them.
So they break in, they get 10 pounds of weed or something really not that significant in the course of this investigation, but that's still $10,000 street value.
Right.
So they split it, and they start working, what they're doing. So ultimately one of them, and I don't know which one, sold some to one of Clean or Cousin's connections. And so somehow, and I don't know how they knew it, but they knew it was Clean and Cousin's dope. So now word's back to Clean and Cousin that these are the guys that ripped you off.
I just bought some of your dope from this guy.
Yeah.
That's stolen from your house.
So now they're in high gear. They're pissed off. And they have to maintain their status on the street. If they let someone rip them off and don't retaliate, then everyone's going to try to rip them off.
Oh.
So they track down Montel, and they're probably going to kill him, but he struggles and they only shoot him in the leg. So now we've got the ID of who they are. From Montel, we get the name of who his accomplice was. We track this guy down, and he gives the same story. He says, we ripped him off. He goes, once they shot Montel, I went into hiding because I figured they were going to come after me. So he goes, I'm laying low at someone else's house for several weeks. And then he goes, I had word on the street. If they came, warn me on both sides of the street. So he had connections. Sure enough, someone calls and says they're coming up the street. So this was a tough guy. He was a badass.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, career criminal, robberies. He had robberies in the past where they called him the hog tie bandit because he would hog tie his victims. Yeah. So you can't make this up.
No.
So he says, I go out on the front porch of my house, or the house I'm at, with my AK-47. And he goes, I lit them up like little bitches. And he said, they ran. So he says that. So that's, if I can document that to be a fact, well, that gives his credibility. If he ever becomes a witness in that, through the roof.
Right.
Okay. So we know the location. So I'm starting to go through police reports and not finding anything. And ultimately, on one of the adjacent houses, we find bullet holes that were reported going in to the house at the time, within weeks of, because nothing's exact on these kind of statements.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying, oh, it was like, the middle of March but.
Right. They're just one day goes into another when you're just getting high all day.
So, but we can verify the statement that he gave, that Montel's verifying his. So things are starting to fall into place. But now we know their names. So it's high gear for me as a narcotics officer or a narcotics background. You're doing utility checks on them. You're doing vehicle registrations, income taxes, an ex parte order on their taxes. From their vehicle registrations, you can go to the dealerships, subpoena, get contracts, see if there's phone numbers. From the phone numbers, you can do phone number research, pen registers to see who they're calling, frequency of calls. I mean, I'm starting to get into these guys. From utilities, you're finding out places that they own. And what we learned real quick from that was they had several residents that they were connected to. One of them was a barber shop at 65th Ave and Ames. Mm-hmm. So there's a laundromat, a little strip mall laundromat with maybe like 2 or 3 business fronts. They were renting one of the business fronts as a barber shop called J&B Barber or something, which was their name, Giles and Brown. So we have that piece of evidence or knowledge. And then if you geographically look at where that barber shop was in relationship to the bodies, it would be Ames, east to 60th, and then north, and that's where the bodies were. So right in my mind, right away, when I learn about that location, I'm thinking, well, they killed him in the barber shop.
Right.
So they've moved out of it. We know from utilities, they moved out of it like 3 days after the murder. So your time correlation's kind of good too. And from that spot, they moved into a place that they had like a fake lawn service, and they ran that out of 7006 and a half Maple. And that was another strip mall where they rented the entire basement of this strip mall. So it was strip mall in the front facing Maple, but then the back alley was lower. So they had the whole basement of that strip mall.
I know exactly what you're talking about too. Yeah. I mean, Jesus.
So
God.
So, so we got the barber shop. We think now these guys are on the loose. Okay.
Yeah.
They're driving up and down Ames probably 10 times a day.
Yeah. And you've got great stories about how you're running surveillance on them. And at one point, one of the guys he notices that you're doing surveillance or whatever, and he comes after you sort of, but I mean, he doesn't know you're a cop. He thinks you might be somebody else.
Well, we have one of our surveillance cars was the maroon Monte Carlo back then.
Yeah.
There was a million of them.
Right.
So they had a maroon Monte Carlo that was in their little ring of cars. I mean, they had more cars than you could imagine that were documenting.
Yes.
So we're in our, probably a bad plan, probably a bad police tactic, but we're in our maroon Monte Carlo sitting in like a car wash or a parking lot, like a half or three quarters of a block away, all tucked in. So one of them comes out, he sees the maroon Monte Carlo, and he thinks, in hindsight, it's one of his homies in one of their cars. So he pulls up, and my partner was Bob Laney, and he's in the driver's seat. So he pulls up on his side, and I mean, I have my gun out. I mean,
for real.
My gun is in my lap. Bob was in a bad spot because we'd be shooting. He'd be in the middle. But so Bob says, he made some comment about, what do you want? And he goes, oh, I thought you were one of my homies, or I thought you were one of my people. And that was the interaction. So
unreal.
Yeah.
So they've got all these, like you do a great job of detail. I know you talk about how you have binders and binders and binders and binders of just, 4-inch binders just filled, dozens of them, just with all this information, credit card receipts, ticket information, taxes, utilities, and everything. But you mentioned that they had this fake barber shop where they've got property there. They have all these houses that they're like paying cash for. Shiner nephew's girlfriend's got a Section 8 apartment that they're running stuff out of. They've got friends. They have this fake lawn service over there on Maple Street. They also have a fake hip hop recording studio because they want to do that.
I'm going to tell you something about the lawn service.
Yes.
So in real life, they had a decal on the side of this lawn truck called K-Noun Lawns. So in the book, I changed it to UAF Lawns, and that stands for You Are Fucked. That's my humor.
Okay. All right.
So You Are Fucked Lawns.
Right. So, and I know we're getting shorter on time, and we're going to have that special guest on in a minute. We're going to give him a call. But
we haven't gotten to him yet. So we're in high gear on this. We're learning a ton of stuff about these guys. It's obvious that they're up to something. In the Maple Street address, they install a high-speed commercial garage door that costs thousands and thousands of dollars. And when we're doing surveillance, this thing would go up, car would come in or out, down. It's not a normal thing that someone would have.
They don't want people peeking in.
Right. Back to the barber shop.
Yeah.
So we want to do a forensic search on that, looking for blood, because I think that's where they killed him. So we have to actually sneak our way in. So we have crime lab. We black out the windows with paper, and then we have to walk equipment in to look for blood. So luminol, your CSI kind of search looking for blood, and we don't find any. So they did not kill him in the barbershop. So
I just think it's interesting.
But that's good to eliminate it too.
Sure.
I mean, that's okay.
Yeah, because then you still they killed him someplace, so you got to find out where that place is.
And other things that we did to check that, we know from their credit cards, they rented a U-Haul truck a couple days before the murder. They returned it a couple days after the murder. That's suspicious.
Right.
So we try to track down this U-Haul truck. Ultimately, U-Haul sold it to some private company somewhere far away, like Michigan or something. We call the owners of that truck. They cooperate and ship it to us on their dime. We dismantle this truck, thinking there might be blood in the grooves or something. That we didn't find any blood there, but that shows the extent of what we're doing. And that's also good if it ever goes to trial. The defense can't say you didn't do something. We can say we did everything.
Well, and there's a chain of custody too. Like you could say, well, you planted it. Well, planted what? This guy had it out in Michigan for months.
Well, there's always chain of custody. Those are always issues. Yeah.
Sure.
So we're dead in the water, or we're not dead. We now know what they are, but we're not getting anywhere. We just know there's some suspicious activity happening. So we got to do something to get it going. So my idea is we will do a wiretap on them. Then we'll re-energize the case in the media, and hopefully they'll incriminate themselves on the wiretap. That's the plan. So to write a wiretap, it's called a Title III officially. You have to show the court that you've exhausted all other investigative techniques to do something that intrusive.
Yeah.
So one of those techniques would be search warrants. So from my records in research, I know that they got several storage units. I mean, more than several. They probably had like 8 or 9. So the plan was, we'll do a couple covert search warrants. So covert is different than normal. That means you're not telling people. I mean, it's black ops, you're breaking in. And then you leave, and you have 2 choices. If you find something, then you have to make it look like a burglary, or you don't take it. But if you make it look like a burglary, they're going to be upset. So, you have to weigh it, what the value of, or leave it there. You could photograph it and leave it. So Milt's Mini Storage, 90th and Maple. We called it Bernie's Mini Storage in the book.
I grew up at 90th and Blondo area.
So that's like 9 blocks away.
Right.
The 9 blocks to the south. Okay. So, we call a locksmith. We sneak there in the middle of the night. It's a secure facility. We've talked to the owners. They let us in the middle of the night, or they gave us a code. We get the locksmith. I think we wrote a search warrant for 3 or 4 of them. First one, he picks the locks.
In seconds.
Yeah, he picks the lock. It takes him no time to pick the lock.
I thought that was funny because you're worried like, God, we got to pay this guy by the hour. And it's like, by the time you're done looking at your watch, he's got the door open.
So he's in. Roscoe and another guy, I think in the book I call him, or Bob Laney I call Roscoe.
Mm-hmm.
And Roscoe was named for my wife's father. So his name was Ross. and a guy named Scrap Iron, because he would do an imitation of George Scrap Iron Godowski,
The old wrestler. The wrestler,
Yeah.
Sure.
So they go in. I'm standing with the sergeant, Bill Jadlowski, who is a great investigator, and he's the one that talked me into going to homicide. I never planned on going to homicide in my life.
Right.
He's the one that convinced me to go there because we did something else together, and he was going back to homicide to boost up his pension numbers, although he probably wouldn't say that. But you make the most overtime in homicide. So that's the way the pension was based, but whatever.
Sure.
So I'm with him. We're getting ready to go to the next storage unit. These guys will maintain that one. And then you hear one of them say, I don't remember what the term was, but you got to see this. And you know the tone of someone's voice when it's good.
Yeah.
And this was the tone that it was good.
You guys found.
So we find like, in this first one, we find like almost $400,000. We're taking $400,000. That's a seizable asset. If we make it look like a burglary, we know these guys are killers. That would be irresponsible. They're going to be pissed off at someone. Even if they're wrong, they're going to do something.
Oh, yeah. There's going to be retaliation for $500,000
So
gone.
we have to make a choice. We during this time period, we hit a couple other units. We're finding marijuana. We're finding guns. We're finding stuff. So things are looking really good, but we have to make that decision. So very quickly, the decision's made that we're going to hit everything we know about them. So that's all the residences that they have, all the storage units. I think it was around 24 search warrants. So I'm authoring 24 search warrants that night to be typed up by the first secretary that gets to the police station. And it was kind of an add-on from the first one that we're using. So you can kind of addend it or amend it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so it's probably the biggest operation Omaha's ever done.
Yeah.
You had 3 SWAT teams assigned because you couldn't hit them all at the same time. So we had to prioritize them.
Because you didn't have enough.
So then we had to have a search team at every location. So once one was secured by the SWAT team, the search team would go on, and then the SWAT team would go to the next one on their list.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I bet you we had 100 or more officers involved in this initial stage. But by the time this is all over, we find like 19 luxury cars or a huge number of cars. We find drug records. We find about 1,000 pounds of dope, guns. The money was incredible, how much we found. By the time that day's over, I think we find about $1.2 million in assets. So, and these cars were paid off. There was no liens on these cars. I'm talking like brand new 750 series BMWs that at the time were going for like $80,000 a piece. They were paid off with like 200 miles on them.
That's what I was reading that part. And I was like, wow.
Yeah. That's the kind of money these guys were going through. So they're in jail now on a great dope case, but we still haven't solved the murder.
At this point of the conversation, dear listeners, we took a look at the clock on the wall and saw that it was time to call the individual in the book referred to as Lil Man. And for our conversation tonight, we'll call him Cooperator number 1. We'll get his reaction to the aftermath of this investigation, the trial, and his involvement the night of the murders featured in 3 Bodies Burning. Enjoy.
I got to remember not to use his real name, too.
Hello.
Hey, this is Brian.
Hey, what's going on, Brian?
Nothing. We are, how about in our terminology here, we'll call you Cooperator number 1. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay. That way we're not using your name. So I'm just going to ask you the questions. It's going to be pretty basic stuff about historical, growing up on 40th Ave, how you got hooked up, kind of ended up hooking up with these guys, and then ultimately what happened the night of the murders and dragging the bodies and all that. Is that cool?
Yeah, that sounds like a plan.
Okay.
So we got the Cooperator number 1 here. I'm going to kind of step back, listeners, and let Detective Brian here and the Cooperator kind of set the stage for you. So, gentlemen.
Okay. So as the investigation was continuing, I ultimately figure out you are probably someone of interest in this triple murder. I leave cards at your grandmother's house in an attempt to make contact with you, not to arrest you, but just to have conversation with you. Tell me what your thoughts were when you ultimately learn that I'm looking for you.
Oh, at that point in time, I was surprised. One, because I feel like you should have known that you should have known nothing about me. Two, I was really, really surprised that a homicide detective is coming looking for me on some drug charges. That rung a bell right there. That didn't make no sense. So I just knew right then and there it was more like game time. I got to put something together. Let's see what's going on, and yeah, basically that's how I looked at it at that point in time.
And ultimately, when you returned the call to me, and you explained to me why you're fearful in cooperating. Because I talked to you and tell you I want you to talk, and I don't know exactly what you're going to say or know, but I know you know something. So tell me what your thought process was once I call you out on that.
About the same. I knew it was game time because I knew you shouldn't have knew nothing about me in that situation. You know what I'm saying? You shouldn't have knew nothing about me. So,
were you fearful that if you did talk, something would happen?
Yeah. That's why right then and there, like I told you, I remember the day, hey, I ain't got nothing to say to you right now. I can't do this right now. I'll talk to you later.
What I remember about that call was you were totally respectful. You weren't being a jerk or anything. And you just said, I don't want to get involved. But I'm not trying to upset you. And I think I told you that I'm going to figure it out and I'm ultimately going to make you cooperate. And I said that pleasantly.
Yeah, I remember that too.
Just so, everyone knew where they were in this case. So ultimately, I do figure out that you're involved based on things that I do investigatively. And then you're arrested on an indictment.
Yeah.
And then what changes your perspective on how you're going to handle it?
I mean, I just looked at a few things. One, I wasn't going to go down for something I know for sure I didn't do. Two, like I said, I always feel like you should have known nothing about me. The people that I feel that was with me didn't even spoke about me. So I wasn't gonna do no time for somebody else. I do some time for me with something I did, but I'm not gonna do no time for nobody else. And now, like I say, at that point in time it was game time because you did your job. Now it's, for me to corroborate, I just felt like I ain't about to go do no years. I'm not doing life for nobody else's bullshit.
Well, what was the reason that you cooperated ultimately? And then just tell what you saw the night of the incident, of the murders.
I'm gonna be honest with you. The reason I cooperated that night, it was more like I'm not gonna go down. I didn't cooperate that night, but I cooperated. Period.
Once you cooperated after the indictment, you've talked to your lawyer, and then you make the decision to talk.
Well, I just knew it was, like I said, I knew it was more. It was. How can I say it? I knew it was over with. It was more to it than just like you say. It wasn't for no marijuana. It was more than that. I mean, I don't want nobody else to feel like I should, because I feel like I ain't snitching on nobody. Which I mean, I did, but that is what it is. But cooperation wise, I had to. I feel like I had to cooperate because I didn't want to go to jail for no fucking life for somebody else's bullshit.
So your decision was based on how much time if you didn't cooperate, you could do a lot of time.
Yeah, that was at the end of the day.
Tell me what you saw that night.
Well, I mean, I really hate to really bring it back up and all that, but like I say, man, that night was a night that was unforgettable. I'm trying to find the words to say. It was unforgettable, overwhelming. I think about it every day. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to get rid of it, but shit, it still comes back around.
To this day, right?
Yeah, to this day. I think about it every time. It haunts me. But shit, I got to move over something I chose to do at that point in time. Like I said, that night right there was a long night. You know, like I said, I seen a lot of stuff, a lot of weed, a lot of bodies, a lot of fake shit going on. You know, I don't know. Like I say, it's a lot.
Okay.
I really know. I don't like really discussing the whole what I seen on it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, too, that when I was reading this book, I can't imagine, because you were pretty young when this happened to you. You were like 19. Is that about right?
Let me see no, I think I was just turning 19, 17, 18 when it happened. I was 19 when I got indicted, locked up. I was just turning 19.
Yeah.
When I got locked up.
I mean, I can't imagine what was going through your mind. I mean, they put you in this situation. You didn't know what was going to happen ultimately that night. They knew what was going to happen. They put you in this situation. And I can't imagine what it's like, you know, for a young man with the background that you've had and all the struggles that you've had, to be placed, for them to put you in this situation and for you to, you know, to kind of pick up the pieces of your life and move on, man. I mean, it's just, I was reading this book and I just couldn't believe, you know, what you saw at at a young age.
Yeah. It haunts me. Like I say, it haunts me to this day. You know, from me. You know, I know it's other people that probably didn't seem worse, but for my eyes, that right there sticks with me every day, every night. So it be sometimes I just glare off in the days and just be thinking like, damn, that really fucking changed my life, man. Like people don't understand. Like you're lonely when it goes to me. I don't know about nobody else, but shit, I'm a lonely person. I have no friends. I just chill by myself, kick it by myself. You know what I'm saying? I don't mess with the coworkers. You know, can't live like your whole life because shit, you know, you never know who wanna, you know, do something strange for a little change.
Yeah,
that's how I look at it.
Yeah. Well, for you to be put in that situation too, I mean, you ran with those guys, but like I said, you know, I read the book and you didn't know what they had planned and what they had planned for you and what was going to happen that night. I mean, and for you to bounce back and for you to stay positive with your life. And, you know, it's remarkable, man. You know, it's those casualties. People read true crime books or they watch true crime shows and they live their, you know, their perfect little lives and they think, wow, that's crazy. But, you know, this is your life. And, you know, I just want you to know that I appreciate you being on the show and sharing your story and, you know, letting it be kind of a word of warning to people out there about the lifestyle and things like that. So, you know, I got respect for you for sharing your story and sharing your struggles.
Oh yeah, no problem. I appreciate you having my time, but you know, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. I don't want people to just think, you know, I'm just trying to downplay certain things and anything like that. I'm being honest with the world too. Like at the end of the day, it still made me a man by learning other things too. See what I'm saying? Just because you go through some bad stuff don't mean it's always bad. You know, one bad thing can always lead to good things. You know, so that's how I look at life.
Fantastic.
Remember when we were in Lincoln talking to that law class and one of the students asked you if you had any PTSD or were upset about the events or how they affected you?
Yeah.
Do you remember what you told that class when you were carrying the bodies?
Oh yeah. That right there, yeah.
Share that with everyone because it's kind of an eye-opening event.
Yeah, that right there, you already know.
Well, I know
about that one. You just imagine when your hand, your finger going through somebody's hand, and it's really just going, you picking up a body, your finger going through your hand. I'm like, what do you know? That messes with me every day. Like I say, that's a night. It's unbelievable. Like,
right.
Yeah. But yeah, I do have a lot of PSD. You know what I'm saying? Every once in a while, like I say, I sit back and just sometimes just think, like, what the hell? Like, what is going on? What was that about? You never know. I try to leave it alone. So don't call me no more, Brian. No, I'm just joking.
Well, I mean, obviously I respect you because I know what you've gone through. And that, since this has all happened, you and I have, crazy as it sounds, I mean, we have developed a relationship. When you come around and we talk to a class, which isn't all the time, but every once in a great while, we'll do something. We went to Chicago once together and talked to a very influential book club once. And so we have a relationship, and there's no getting around it, which is kind of a unique thing for a homicide investigator and one of the people that was involved in the events that night to develop that. And I mean, I never ever thought that would happen, but down deep, I liked you from the first time you called me, when you were respectful and you said, I just didn't understand how bad the situation was. And at that point you couldn't talk, but you did not, you said you didn't want to be disrespectful to me. And that always stuck with me.
Oh yeah, and I mean that's real. I'm being honest. I really didn't want to. Like I say, I already knew what you was there for. I ain't no dummy. But
Right.
shoot, I mean, I have made dumb decisions in life, but at the end of the day, that right there was a life, lesson learned. I just, like I try to tell the kids, man, just stay in school and stay on the right path. Because before all that, I was a track star, football star. I went for the money, not the
money from
real,
the money from dealing,
grades,
right?
And for all the I was sure I went to state. I played football, did all that stuff. But
how much money would you make in a night on 40th
Ave? Like I said, it all depends, man. On a good day, you could easily do more than shit, $20,000 if you got a good customers coming through buying good pounds like that. You know what I'm saying? It all depends on what you're doing.
Because they're just rolling through, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, that's the neighborhood. That's the neighborhood, man. It ain't. It's just like any other neighborhood. You can learn from it. It can make you or break you. I do now. Don't get it twisted. I love that neighborhood because that's where I was born and raised. And I'm not gonna say it's a. You know what I'm saying? It's not a bad place. It is a bad place if you don't get out. You know what I'm saying? But if you just let it sink you in, then it's a bad place. But I love it because that's where I grew up from, in Omaha, Nebraska. But it plays a part of my life that changed my life. I don't, I can't say, hey, that's what, I don't tell any kid, man, go out there and go shoot somebody or go out there and pack a gun. That's not what you should do.
Right.
Go do something else, man.
But it was a time in your life where you could just make money hand over foot.
Yeah. Yeah, you can. Yeah, that's
what dragged you in, right?
Yeah, right. You got to think. I mean, I walk outside and I can see everybody doing their thing. You know what I'm saying? Whoever, I ain't gonna say no. I don't know. Not damn sure I ain't gonna say no goddamn names. That's not my job.
No. That's what I'm not asking that.
Shit, no.
We are not asking that. I am not a police officer anymore.
Shit.
I don't need anybody knocking on my door either.
Fuck no.
No, we're not. We're not going down that road.
But no, that's just how it was, man. That's just how it is. But I like I say, I still love it because that's where I grew up at and I respect it. But it's just not what I choose to do. If I go back, I'd be like, you guys are stupid.
So, and you do everything from marijuana to crack to whatever.
Say that one more time.
When you're selling stuff, you're doing
marijuana. Oh, yeah. I mean,
any of the drugs, right?
Well, no, not any of the drugs. I don't mess with nothing but shit that brings. Like me personally, I just love to sell weed because it brings certain customers. You know what I'm saying? Crack cocaine and all that shit. They bring bullshit customers. I like women and friendly people. You see what I'm saying? I'm a friendly type of guy. I'm not trying to, that's me. Anything else but shit.
And the way it worked was you would get the dope up front, you would sell it, and then you'd have to pay back what you owed. Is that the way it ran? Yeah. So they fronted it to you.
Yeah, it was a front game. All depends on who you. Yeah.
Yep. So that's like dope or line of credit, just so everyone understands that he would get it to sell, and then he had to pay back his portion, and then he got the profit of whatever was left. Do you got any more?
I'm just still tripping on $10,000 to $20,000 in a day. Holy God.
Man, you just gotta know who you talk. You just gotta know who you're messing with.
Woo, man.
I ain't gonna lie. I dropped out of school for that stupid shit.
Man.
There's no taxes.
Unbelievable. God, man, I can't believe. You know, I mean, I'm not stupid. I mean, I grew up in Omaha, and I know I'm not turning a blind eye to what happens in this city and cities like it across America. But just when you got somebody on your show and they're being real and they're saying these kind of numbers, and and I read the book, just man, I just can't believe it. Just
You see, you never know. Hey, don't get you ain't a cop no more. Like I said, salute to ones like who is getting money, especially if you're doing. I hate to say it, but shit, I keep it real. I don't give a damn how you feel. Not to you guys or anybody else. They just feel it. I mean, with marijuana, if you selling marijuana, man, geez Louise, I should leave them alone because it's legal in every fucking 50 fucking states. Jeez Louise, man. I'm just saying, man, if somebody's selling marijuana, you should be like, hey, God.
You can buy pipes in Millard. You can buy pipes. You can buy the weed.
Yeah.
You can buy the 2023, man.
The law has definitely changed since we were doing that at that time. The law has changed.
Yeah. Especially leave people alone, man. Nobody trying to.
Trying to think what else we'd like to ask you.
I'm good, man. I just want to thank you for your time. It's just incredible to have, a player in the book, giving their side of the story and just having their voice. I just want to be able to say that I've, give somebody a voice on the show and let them say what they want to say. So.
I appreciate you calling me up. Like I said, Brian, don't call me no more. You hear?
All right. I'll call. You know I will. I'm always checking on you.
All righty.
All right. Talk to you later.
Y'all take it easy.
All right. Bye. What'd you think about that?
Yikes, man. I mean, like I said, I'm not giving him any crap or any bullshit. Like, I do respect him that he's turned his life around. I know he's done time because I read your book, but like I said to him, and at 17, he was put in that situation.
Oh, they manipulated him. I mean, They absolutely manipulated his life. I mean, they were taking advantage of him.
Yeah. I mean, and the guy, you talk about how his dad, we talked about this guy, Rick, who was driving the marijuana back and forth between Omaha and Phoenix. Right. Well, his partner for a little bit
was his dad.
This is his dad. And he didn't do any, his dad slept all the way back from Phoenix. I mean, he didn't.
Yeah, he was just there to collect money, but he didn't work for it.
Right. So, I mean, that's what he grew up with. And so, that's what he grew up with, and when he talks about 40th Street, I mean, I know. I know what parts of town my parents told me to stay out of.
That's one of them.
Yeah, for sure.
So they were the 40th Ave Crips. That was the name.
Jesus.
40th Ave Crips.
Amazing. All right. So we just talked to him.
We'll go back to, we've done the warrants. They're in jail. So what's the next phase? The next phase, the idea, we wanted to do the wiretap.
That's
happen. Out. That's right. Out. So, and then just processing the wiretap, or not, just processing the search warrants was a massive undertaking. It took weeks to process and organize just so I had it in my mind what all we had and where it came from. Because I should say, I was at every location at some point because I was the author of the search warrant or the affiant. So I had to be at each location legally. I didn't have to be there for long, but I was at each location.
Because you authored the warrant?
Yes.
Okay.
The warrants, yes.
No. Right. Well, I mean, for each individual location.
For each individual location. So getting that processed was a huge undertaking. That's finally done. And what also happens during that time period was something very interesting. The girlfriend of Clean calls me. And she says that she needed to get some personal items that were the kids' toys and clothes and whatever we took that was the kids. So we honored that and picked it up and returned it to her. Mm-hmm. Then she calls me a little bit later and she says, hey, there was a camcorder that I need to get back too. So there was so much going on that I completely forgot the camcorder. We always look at video camcorders or whatever. I mean, that's one of the first things we always do.
There was a part in the book where you're like, well, you might find some evidence, but you said like a lot of times there's like adult videos. And
so anyway, but for legal purposes, I needed to look at it.
Yeah.
She's asking for it. That's kind of suspicious, but I hadn't done my job just because I was an airhead, whatever. So I don't want to be responsible for trying to look at it and erase something. So I take it to the tech guy at the United States Attorney's Office. He was really good at his job. So I'm checking out evidence. I'm in the chain of custody. We go to the U.S. Attorney's Office. He plays with it, and we about shit our pants when we start watching it. It is a video of our two parties at the garage at 7006 and a half Maple, and one of them sitting at a table. There's a stack of money on the table, and he's counting money, and the other party sticks his head in the video and says, I'm the cameraman or whatever, and they're bragging about how good at dope dealers they are and how successful they are. And one of the statements was, Mr. Policeman, if you ever see this, it's just some sage in the bag. Well, sage is the marijuana, and then they're panning in on it, showing us the marijuana. They're bragging about the cars. They pan the garage, looking at all their vehicles. They're just bragging about how good at dope dealers they are.
Yeah, no wonder they wanted the videotape back.
Yeah. So ultimately we have that in our possession. Also at this time, I'm listening to the jail calls, and ultimately I find the jail call where he tells his girlfriend to call me to get the video camera. So the whole thing fits into place, but it doesn't happen when I'm finding it. It's not in the exact order the way it happened. So She came to me, but I haven't heard the call yet.
Yeah.
But ultimately that all fits into place when you present it to the jury.
Yeah. Now, I mean, like you go through 350 pages in this book, like how exhaustive the trial and like how all the work goes. But let's just say, for the sake of time, that you're bringing these two guys to trial, but then you kind of offer her a deal as well, and then she decides not to be a part of the deal.
She was offered, they call it a proffer agreement, where a party who's been indicted, we indicted her because in these phone calls, she incriminated herself. She was still collecting money once they were in jail. So she's part of it. We indict her, and then she's, give up your man. It's your choice. And she didn't do it. She stuck by him. Her lawyer would call and say she's ready to talk. We'd set up this big event, and then she wouldn't talk. She'd start crying, and it never evolved. So she sat, the way the trial was, it was 3 tables on the defense side. It was Clean, Cousin, and her. They each had a lawyer, and they could each ask questions on cross.
Yeah.
But she ended up doing 12 years in prison.
Yeah, and you also
didn't see her kids grow up. I mean, it's tragic.
I just did a Google search on her, and one of her daughters died.
Mm-hmm.
Well, her daughter with Dale.
Yep.
Died. So do you know how that happened? Or
no, I mean, I could figure it out. I've kind of
like 20.
I've kind of I don't do the research that I used to do.
Well, you're retired. I mean, you got other shit.
There's only, well, it's just, you let it go after. I mean, it consumed my life.
Totally. And I understand that. But here's one funny thing though. And like, you might think everybody like, wow, we've just been listening to this show for like almost an hour and a half. And you don't have the whole story. Like this book, like I said, 350 pages of police procedure, crime. I mean, just everything. It's so interesting. But here's the funny thing. Like, and I do want to say this though, because when they didn't put on much of a defense for their trial. And when the jury got the instructions and they started deliberating, you thought, well, I got some time off while they deliberate. I'm going to go mow the lawn. So then you go home, mow the lawn, and then you get a call like, hey, they're going to read the verdict in 35 minutes.
I mean, I was in the middle of mowing my lawn.
So you're talking about how you have to wear like your suits and your ties, and because you're a witness and you're testifying and you're doing all this and you have to be like super professional. But then when it came time for them to read the verdict, you're in your lawn mowing clothes and you're busting your ass, driving, breaking some speed limits to get to the courthouse to hear
the verdict,
which was guilty on all these counts.
Yep.
So.
They ended up getting 3 life sentences for the murders, and then about 200 plus years for the drugs and the guns. So that's how it ended.
Yeah.
Let's tell one story. So cops have humor. Let's tell them the testicle story.
Oh, okay. That's hilarious. I do want to, but then also this, like you, big fan of Waffle House.
Oh yeah. I never knew about Waffle House until the first trip to Arizona, and you got a per diem. So you
Right.
You only get so much money to spend for food. And so we see this place called the Waffle House, and it was like, we ate a good breakfast for like $2 and it tasted fantastic.
It's just funny. Like throughout the book, you're like, well, we went to Phoenix and, we did this and this and this and part of the trial, and we went to Waffle House. And then you're like, oh, we went here to interview this person. And luckily they had a Waffle House, it was pretty funny. So yeah, tell the testicle story.
No, let's let them read the book. If you guys want to hear a good testicle story,
and who doesn't like a good testicle story?
Oh, a good testicle story goes a long way.
For real. Okay. I told my wife the story last night. Okay. Yeah, we'll leave them with that. It's why you can go to Amazon. And now you wrote this book. There's a Facebook page if people want to follow like your different lectures and your talks and where you go in the community to kind of spread the word about this. Because it looks like you're having a lot of fun just spreading the word, and people have been super receptive to this book.
Yep. The book's done very well. I was originally told that a guy like me could sell like 500 books and you would be a huge success.
Yeah. So
I said, well, that's an easy challenge. Like 200 to family, 200 to cops, and 100 people would make a bad purchase.
Right.
And the book's gone way beyond that.
Yeah. I mean, it says right here, Amazon, it was a #1 bestseller in Amazon for true crime. It's super authentic. I know you change names to protect identities of people and their lives now, and just people's relationship with the with what happened. It was also a Book of the Year winner. But yeah, just it's incredible. And I know that you've been approached by different television and Hollywood and writers and producers. We'll see how that all pans out, but they're attracted to it because it's an authentic story. It's captivating as hell. And it just, if you're interested at all in police procedure, true crime, things like that, in a city like Omaha, I always start off the show by saying from the historic haunted heartland of Omaha, Nebraska. And I'm proud as hell of my hometown. Born here, I'm going to die here. I love Omaha. But it's not immune to these kinds of things. And luckily we've had, we have people, protecting the citizens. And also I want to make a point of saying that, these were 3 Hispanic guys, criminals, but their lives mattered. I mean, you were exhaustive in your search for justice for these guys that were shot cold-blooded, assassin style, and just dumped and set on fire. I mean, you guys, went for the pursuit of justice.
Absolutely. That's the key.
I'm really excited that you came down to the Necronomicast studios. What else you got?
I got one other thing that I just want to add in.
Do it.
The key to getting people to talk is you take them out to eat. So if I pick someone up at the county court or the county jail, Douglas County Corrections, or wherever they're at, and I'm going to bring them to the U.S. Attorney's office for an interview, they're in my custody, but you take them somewhere to eat beforehand. You hit a drive-through wherever you can. I mean, I actually done it where we've gone into restaurants before and make it look kind of covert, but you always want them to eat. With that said, the cop's best friend is a donut. Okay. I mean, that's a faux pas, but it's true.
Well, yeah, that's the old trope about.
And I'm going to tell you where the best donut place is in the world.
Oh, in the world. All right.
I'm going to world.
All right.
There is a little donut shop in Blair, Nebraska called Jim and Connie's Bakery.
Oh, get out. I know Jim and Connie. I know them.
Jim and Connie's Bakery. Is that not the best donut shop in the world?
Yeah, their pastries are great. They're great caterers too.
Yes.
I used to work for a place and they would cater the Christmas meal and
Yep.
Yeah, Jim and Connie, and they're super sweet. Connie's she's the salt of the earth. She's great. Jim too.
That's Jim. Funny. Jim has passed away.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, shoot.
So Connie, but she's quite an interesting person, and she makes the best donut in the world.
I'm not going to argue.
So everyone go to a donut shop in Blair, Nebraska, and buy a donut, and it'll rock your world.
It's a hell of a donut for sure.
And they sell 3 bodies burning there.
Oh, do they really? They have it right there in the store?
Well, a cop book and a donut. I mean, it goes hand in hand.
You know, most cops or police officers, most police officers would think it was insulting to say that cops just love a good donut. But here, I've got one right here live in the studio telling me like where to go. And I didn't have to go very far.
This cop loves his donuts.
Right on. And with that, everybody, make sure you follow the link on the show notes here at the Necronomicast to purchase the book. Buy it on Amazon. And that's right. As Brian says, if you buy the book, you read the book, and you enjoy the book, please leave a review so other people can follow your lead and follow this incredible true crime story like no other right here in the historic haunted heartland. Brian, thank you so much for all this time. Thanks for hooking us up with the, what do we call him?
Cooperator.
The Cooperator. Thank you for hooking us up with the Cooperator. Everybody, it's been my honor to have retired police, detective, homicide, and narcotics officer, Brian Bogdanoff. How do you say your last name again?
Bogdanoff.
I was saying it wrong in my head for months.
I've been
Bogdanoff.
told, I've had defense attorneys mess with it just to try to throw me off on the stand. Can I tell you one more story?
Is it about like James Martin Davis? Or
No, but he's a buddy of mine.
Oh.
Yeah, he passed away too.
Yep. Go ahead with one more.
James was a good guy.
Yeah.
But so you have asshole attorneys, and there's a lot of good attorneys, but there's some that are assholes, and they'll try to fuck with you on the stand.
Right.
So they'll either ask a question where it's not factual, trying to get you to agree, and then they'll jump your shit.
Yeah.
Or they'll screw up your name, trying to get you all rattled. So I had this one. He's messing up my name. So when I respond back to him, I'm not going to say his real name, but it kind of sounded like Nutlick. So I call him Mr. Nutlicker.
On the stand?
On the stand. I mean, very nonchalantly.
Right.
But it was just a thing of beauty.
And the judge was just...
Judge took it right on.
Oh, I love it.
And then I asked a prosecutor once to go, why are you letting that guy fucking beat me up? And they go, well, he was looking like an asshole in front of the jury, so I didn't want to stop him.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird the way the minds think?
Like let this guy, like I'm going to give him all the rope he needs to hang himself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic.
While I'm getting beat up in the meantime.
Man, well, you could.
So there's a behind the scenes story of kind of trial stuff.
I love it. Hey, thanks for your time.
All right. I'm done talking.
All right. Well, there we go, everybody. What an episode. What a barn burner of an episode. 3 bodies burning with retired detective, homicide, and narcotics division, Brian Bogdanoff. You guys got a lot of local flavor there about my wonderful city of Omaha, Nebraska. You know, you've heard so much about Omaha. Why don't you just make the voyage, make the trip, come down and see the Necronomicast live show, Historic Haunted Heartland Part 2. The Spirits Speak. With this saxophone player, Andrew Vogt, live on stage. The great evidential medium, Cindy Kaza from the Dead Files, alive on stage. And after a brief intermission where you can go hit the cash bar and the merchandise table, stick around for John E.L. Tenney and one of his signature weird reactions or weird lectures, which will be a weird reaction to the shenanigans on stage presented by Andrew, Cindy, and myself. All kinds of surprises for you at Historic Haunted Heartland 2, The Spirits Speak. Tickets available at Necronomicast.com, at the Benson Theater, and that's TheaTre.org. Come see us in Omaha. Having a lot of fun here with the Necronomicast. Got some big September shows. I'm not sure which one's going to go first, but they're both recorded. So until then, thanks for listening. Get some sleep.